there's going to be a claim. And that's where there's a lot of human emotion involved. So as long as there's human emotion involved, there's going to be humans involved in our end in some capacity.
My name is Nick Berry, and this is Connected Conversations in Insurance by Canopy Connect. Today, I am joined by Landry Fields. I'll let him give a quick intro to himself, and then we'll get started.
Hey, I'm Landry Fields, founder and CEO of Nova Insurance, a 6-year scratch agency. I've been able to use technology over the last 6 years and excited for what I'm going to be able to do over the next 5 years to kind of stand out and really grow our agency in a way that I think pre-AI was never really able to do at the scale that I plan to do. So it's been exciting and excited to be here. Appreciate your invite.
Yeah, thanks for agreeing to jump on a call with me. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about, because you're one of those voices that's coming out that is not just technology forward, but pro AI, and actually talking about some of the things that nobody else is really talking about in AI. So that's why I was like, I need to get Landry on.
Yeah, I feel like it is a little bit of a lonely island. Like sometimes you're like, okay, I see this vision and this is where things are headed. And then you look back and you're like, okay, there's still not really anybody behind me type of scenario. Like, am I definitely going, when you think you're going the right direction? I definitely think so.
Yeah.
It definitely feels like sometimes I'm on a little bit of an island, like I said, in some of the stuff I'm thinking about. But again, I think a lot of that affords the fact that I did have a scratch agency. I started from scratch, and therefore I'm usually thinking in a way where I can kind of pivot and try things at a much faster scale than probably a lot of just people who have been around doing it for a certain way for a long time. And I'm still in that build out process as I build this agency from nothing, which has afforded me the way I'm wired to kind of really dive into this at a perfect timing that it was when AI came out, when we were all talking about it between Thanksgiving and Christmas of 2022. So it's been crazy.
Yeah. I remember I was at another company when the first publicly facing LLM based services were coming out. Jasper is the one I was, well, it's now called Jasper, but they had another company name and then had to drop it because Disney threatened them to sue them.
Oh.
Yeah. That was the first. And I was looking at it and I jumped on and I was like, this is going to, I was looking short term about the impact on what it would have for marketing teams. And then I started getting into it and I'm like, and then I started seeing the OpenAI, their API stuff come around and all these, how many products have launched that are just ChatGPT wrappers?
I think I posted that like a couple of weeks back.
Yeah.
And me being where I've at and being a lot more vocal, I've started to get, different companies or quote unquote new insurtechs reaching out, kind of me asking me or wanting my thoughts on stuff or demos that might be things still in development. And it's like, I don't want to be like, just crush their spirit type of scenario, but at the same time, kind of also trying to speak like, well, I can already do half of this that you're trying to, I don't say it this way, but I can already do half of what you're trying to already do already with ChatGPT, Gemini, or Copilot. Maybe not Copilot. Copilot's got some catching up to do, honestly. But the reality is, there's a lot of people just jumping on this bandwagon, and we're just going to basically put, like I said, a thin layer of wrapping paper of AI around basically something that you can probably already do. Or at this point, maybe even just develop yourself, which is a whole nother topic of the world of vibe coding or low code, no code type of scenarios. And that's probably the first time I've actually mentioned that in a podcast yet. I've been kind of like building out more of my exploration into that world and where that's going before I really was comfortable kind of talking about it. But it's wild what's going to happen over the next kind of 4 to 5 years by the end of the decade.
Yeah. And there's some stuff that's come out in the last few weeks that I'm trying to, even as someone, I would consider myself relatively tech forward and definitely in the insurance world. I had to ask ChatGPT and even Claude, hey, how do I learn about this? Or how do I figure this out and apply it to my business? Because there's some like the MCP stuff. That's when you mentioned that, I was like, oh, I could go see what Landry's talking about. And I was like, oh, this is nuts. This is way more than this the agent AI stuff.
And a good way to think about that too, I've dived a whole lot more in that even since we hung out and talked last, which was just, the MCP is more like that easy communication of like, we're so used to the API world. So it's almost like a newer iteration of that, where it's going to be able to take existing APIs and things of that nature and kind of replacing the RPA method of us having to build out every single step. But then on top of that, you take that and then marry it with what's A2A, which is agent to agent, which is what's being built out by Google and so forth right now, where let's say we've talked about AI, people are, the buzzword is agents or these AI agents. Well, obviously we're not talking about insurance agents, but I mean, actually, at this point, I'm beginning to think there probably could be actual insurance agents that are AI agents. So that's a whole nother conversation I was just having with somebody today. But the reality, so the A2A thing that's being developed out, which is why this is all going to change real rapidly here in the next 6 to 12 months, is then, almost like a vertical. I'm communicating with MCP is communicating with AI, but then the AI cross talking to each other is more the A2A side of things. And so, we're just developing the highways and protocols now to kind of take the Wizard of Oz out of the little box that he is in, that he can only reside in type of scenario, to kind of, like I said, put arms, legs, a brain, everything else like that to this. So I know the reason I keep harping on it, I know you've probably done so as well, but especially in my circles with as an actual agency owner, it's like, I don't think people are realizing the gravity of how quickly this is going to happen, and thinking, we're still like, these things will take time to adopt this, that, or the other. But the world we're moving into, where carriers no longer necessarily have all of the power as far as some of the technology aspect of this, that, or the other. And, I can circumvent some of that stuff if I really wanted to. I don't think we should. I think they should be more open. And I'm pushing for carriers to be more open in that respect, so we can kind of do this thing the right way and more secure way, probably, in that sense. I'm not trying to do anything illegal, of course. I mean, like I said, I'm just trying to be a sounding board right now and realize people got a lot of waking up to do. At the same time, there's a lot of people who are going to be very slow, and that's what I'm also trying to prepare for in that sense. So I think there's going to be a lot of legacy agencies out there in this, which I get. If I was a 40 or 50-year long, decades old agency that was thinking about retirement, man, this is a whole nother world that I'm just not ready to tackle in type of scenario. There's definitely an opportunity here in that perspective, for sure. What's about, if you kind of are forward thinking enough and realizing how you can better value add to a lot of carriers or agencies that might not want to move forward in the way the new world's going to work.
Yeah. I think a lot of people look at AI and just go, oh, it's just this black box of we're going to put information in, we're going to get information out. We don't know why. I look at AI and even technology in general as your force multiplier. What can you do to make your team's life easier? What can you do to make your life easier as an agency owner? And what can you do to make your customer's life easier? And
Mm-hmm.
I think AI is the next natural evolution of tech for businesses.
Well, tech, and I would expand upon it beyond that. So I'm working on kind of an AI 101 course for a lot of just people who are coming across me. They're out constantly asking stuff, well, where do I start? Right. But to expand upon what you're saying, as far as more tech, I think it's a marriage of that, and the way we need to think about that is a little bit different. So, for example, I'm encouraging, and I'm going to be doing this myself. And part of the course I was developing is, like, I developed a graphic of, like, kind of like the organizational hierarchy aspect, right? Here's the C-suite, here's maybe owner, CEO or owner, here's the C-suite, here's this, thinking more from a high level organization standpoint for the image here. Here's director of marketing, director of sales, director of service, blah, 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 right? But then continue to build that out and realize that, okay, well, maybe my service team, maybe I don't need 5, 6, 7, 10 different service people. Maybe it now becomes one or two, and they're managing now under them service that's actually an AI bot. And so thinking in that way of not necessarily replacing, it's more of just like, it's transitioning from a skill that a human was required to do to now it's a figurative AI employee who has a role, and mapping your kind of organization out in that way, I think, is a great way to kind of really plan for the future and what's going to be possible, as assuming you're learning about what is possible at that point in time. But I think so that even more so, it's not just technology anymore.
Yeah. Dude, I just got back from FAIA. I always fumble that one. There were two really cool AI companies who are there. They're not trying to replace people. They're trying to make everybody's life easier. One of them was an inbound voice tool that allowed agencies to get rid of the phone tree, use plain language. The user can just say what they want, who or what they want to do, and then it routes to the correct organization. And if it's after hours, they can actually create service opportunities
Mm-hmm.
from that phone conversation. You get into a car wreck at 7 o'clock at night. A tree falls on your roof on Sunday afternoon, and all you have to do is call your insurance agent, say, "Hey, a tree fell on my roof," and the AI grabs the information, looks at the customer's phone number, looks it up in their CRM or AMS, and then creates a service ticket for the team to deal with during business hours. Those kinds of things are like, I've been in this business for 20 years. We've been dreaming of this stuff.
Yeah. And we're within the next 12 months or 24 months of a lot more people doing. And then you take that step further, and what does it look like 5 years from now? Well, not only did it create the service ticket, but now it actually starts going and doing some of the service ticket stuff. So
Yep.
maybe you have a human stamping it at the end to make sure, from a licensing aspect, from a legal aspect, voice or a human kind of authentication aspect of what's about to happen, but all of it was kind of pretty much done, and you're kind of reviewing it in that sense. So I think that's even where we're going well beyond. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be here quick. It's very exciting for those who are, looking towards this, and
Yep.
open-minded, open-handed in some ways for what it can do.
Yeah. And I've seen some conversations online about the aspect of AI. And I'm like, at the end of the day, a human still has to review what the AI does. It's no different than offloading the work to a non-licensed CSR in your office or hiring from offshore. A human still has to review the
Mhm.
work.
Yeah, we're in the game where there's a lot of emotion when it comes to insurance, because eventually there's going to be a claim, and that's where there's a lot of human emotion involved. So as long as there's human emotion involved, there's going to be humans involved on our end in some capacity.
Yep.
Um, just the daily stuff that takes more of our time, that's just moving information from one place to another to kind of get a result. And sometimes that aspect of presenting that result could be offset, but the closing of the information coming out the back door and human stamping it, I think, is a real scenario where we're headed. I mean, I just saw a video that blew my mind so for example, in China, it's been huge for a while. It's going to become huge here. So if you've never heard of this is your first time hearing about it, just know that you heard it here first. But like this online shopping, as far as like live, it's like, rather than you calling in, like it's people like us doing it, right? It's not on a TV channel, and it's been massive over there. There's this one dude, I don't know his name or anything like that, but he's a huge person over there. But he hired a company, and they developed out their own avatar for him, which avatar scenarios for people, it's like, the fake version of you, and that's already a thing with some companies like HeyGen, HEYGEN, etc. But he had to develop out a specific one based upon him, and included 800 different motions, his voice, etc. And he did a 16-hour straight live stream, or 16, maybe it was a very, very long time live stream, somewhere like 6 to 12 hours, something like that. And the entire thing, including taking live calls, live answer questions, etc., was his avatar of himself, and no one knew it the entire time. You could not tell. And
That's,
he had paid good money to kind of like go beyond this extra step, obviously, to
yeah.
create this specifically for him from this company. But that's the technology where we're at. Like, I mean, maybe there's a point where I'm having conversations on advising stuff. I don't know. I'm just speculating on this, that, or the other, in a way that I gets to the answer faster than I could. But then I still confirm everything on the back end for anything binding or changing or reviewing this, that, or the other coverages. But I mean, that could be a real world scenario we're at coming to.
Yeah. I demoed one of these voice AI products late last year, and I had talked to the founder. He said, I'm gonna have it call you. I'm not gonna tell you when it's gonna happen. I'm not gonna tell you the number or anything, but it's gonna call and give you just just a sales demo, voice sales demo of the product. And it happened Saturday morning about 9:30. So, and I answer every phone call that comes in, unless it says robocaller. So I
Yeah, yeah.
took it, and I got done. And I'm like, wait a minute, that was it? Oh, that was, and I was like, had I not known that it was an AI
Coming.
tool coming, I would have never even thought. And then I got on a call with the founder, and he showed me the call, and he showed me everything else, and he showed me how they did what they did it. And I was like, this is going to change and I'm thankful there's some legislation around the
Mm.
outbound dialing of AI callers,
Yeah.
but inbound, it's endless. What you can do and what we're going to be able to do as far as that multiplication of force, I compare it to the late 2000s era of landing pages and video sales funnels. You
Yeah.
could record a webinar, run it, and then you just run it evergreen for 10 months, and people just sign up for your product from that. But
Yeah.
it's 73 times better because it actually isn't just a recording, it's actually responsive and based on how you built your business.
Yeah. And I'm super excited. Like I plan to be able to implement some of those things at least after hours and during lunch, at least as a stepping stone here in the next probably 12 months. It's great to hear that it was already at that point. I was a little apprehensive that it was maybe there was some delays here and there. To flip that on the other side, I keep trying to tell people like by the end of the year, it's almost here. Like Google's already within like, Google Maps, this, that, or the other Google stuff. By the end of the year, we will be scenarios where you're getting phone calls or be able to use Google and the AI assistant there to call and make reservations for you. Ask. So within 12 months, probably, we're going to start getting calls from AI agents or assistants, so to speak, shopping insurance on behalf of a real human too.
Oh yeah.
So then where does that go? More back to the A2A scenario and communication, this, that, or that. Like, what if you have your AI calling my agency and I have my AI answering the phone? I mean, they honestly, things could get so fast on how to quickly think, and then you marry it with, hey, Canopy Connect, just to get the information over there, because it then sends the text message
Yep.
over or email over or whatnot, and your AI assistant is kind of monitoring it and is able to kind of like boop, 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 and then it's there, and then it starts running all the quotes, and then it kind of says, here's a presentation and to the agent, and the agent's just basically looking at these, here's the best options. I'm going to say, yep, this is what we're going to go with, approves it, then creates a custom proposal, probably maybe even a custom video. Honestly, that's already a scenario I'm working on too, a custom video proposal of the agent and the agent's voice, the real human version of them, and then it's sent off. I mean, that could happen so fast.
Yep.
And the only thing the actual human did was like review everything, review what came across the desk as far as the quote, said, yep, that's good to go, and then it also created the quote for him in his voice, etc. And the next step is just binding it, type of scenario.
Yeah. I think the first rater to build an AI enabled tool to take the data, have your presets, have your coverage, have your agency coverage preferences enabled.
I'm gonna need you to remove this part from the podcast as well. Okay, because you're already where I'm at. Oh.
But I'm like, why doesn't that exist?
There's
But
Ivans.
yeah, but okay, we'll just go down different. Now, I did have a question. I did post to my audience, said I was going to have you on today, and had a question. What do they want to know about AI? And the first response was they see all these examples of what AI can do, but they're curious about specific things AI is doing really well today for you, and what meaningful capabilities do you think you'll see in 90 and 365 days? So it's a two-part question.
Two-part question. Yeah. I mean, the first place I've been telling people, and like I said, part of this course I'm developing, because everybody's asking the same question. Where do I start? Where do I even begin with this stuff? One, people need to kind of learn what's happening, what the programs are out there, what it's capable of, and then how do I start using it and utilizing it. Back to the whole, everything, there's a lot of AI technologies out there. We already have the existing ecosystems of Copilot for Microsoft and then Gemini for Google, or you might be just using and playing around with ChatGPT. Honestly, there's so many people that just haven't really taken that step into that world that really just need to start doing so, playing around with it. Creating what's called custom GPTs is a great place to start, which is almost like a saved prompt, because within prompting, it's so key to kind of just say, hey, here's who you, as the AI, I need you to be this person and emulate this person in your response, so that it kind of gives instruction on what role it's playing for you. So laying out the role that it's needed there. Already, from a scenario of what we have with either Google or Workspace, like you have Gemini or Copilot that are already baked into your ecosystems already. I think there's a certain point as we approach artificial general intelligence, which is where we're headed, where kind of all the AIs is as smart as the smartest person in that field. They all probably catch up to each other at some point in some capacity. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. But for example, I mean, we're on the Copilot's got some of these features now as well, but I'm on the Google side of things. And so, for example, I can just simply go into Gemini. It's already baked into my ecosystem. I can just hit the ampersand sign and select Google Drive, and we're moving all of our information from policy jackets to underwriting guidelines to carrier information, just all the stuff, we used to typically, if you were ahead of thinking, you would put into and build out in your own custom internal office website or intranet type of website, right?
Mm-hmm.
Google site, whatever. Well, a lot of that information now, I'm mostly moving into shared Google Drive folders, because all it is information. All you have to do is go into Gemini, hit at ampersand, select Google Drive, and ask the question. Last Friday, we just finished putting together a home insurance one, and it's listing all of the roof depreciation payouts. Now I can just say, give me the whole list of 20 years of all of our carriers, or hey, this particular carrier at 18 years, what is the depreciation schedule, roof schedule payment scenario? I can get the answer in 5 seconds just by asking it, because it's already in our shared drive. So if something changes, you just take it out of the drive, put a new one in, put the new version of it in, and everyone has access to it. That's half the battle, right? Is getting people from an adoption standpoint inside their agencies. That's why I think that's such an easy step forward into just saying, hey, just use it to find the information that you're already going to go search for anyway. It's just going to speed up your process of finding the information that you're kind of already used to looking for and trying to find in shared folders or on your intranet. So I think that from an early adoption standpoint, your first 9 days is just an easy place to start. Create some custom gems, which are the GPTs for Gemini, or custom GPTs in Google and Microsoft, or even in ChatGPT. You can be using ChatGPT. They can integrate to, OneDrive, Google Drive, stuff like that. There is a setting to kind of uncheck the box of sharing some of not the information from the drives. It's very specific that it's not going to share that, but it can still kind of leverage some of that stuff for external training. So you still need to make sure in those settings you uncheck those boxes.
Yep.
And I know Nick knows, don't use free versions of anything.
Yep.
Just starting with what you already have, you can do so much. You can create a custom GPT for anything related to work comp stuff. You can create a custom GPT where it's like a save prompts. So it's a policy scrapers for commercial policies. And then I love the Google one personally, and I'm a big advocate because the exporting aspect of it is incredible. Let's say here's 300 pages of commercial declarations. I need to scrape the information so I can go quote it. Well, here it is. Now what do I do with it? Well, thankfully in Google, you can just hit one button and boom, it's over into a Google document, this, that, or the other.
Yep.
With just the click of a button. I've even got one from a policy comparison one from our VA that does a lot of the quoting with AI and stuff like that. But once she gets it in, she puts it in the agency Zoom, but then she uploads the different quotes that are out there. Here's the carrier A, carrier B, carrier C. She uploads them. It already knows from the prompt, then spits out a comparison that almost looks like an Excel spreadsheet in Gemini. Hits one button, sends it to the Gmail draft, and sends it to the agent. So now we know all the proposals are in agency Zoom and notified us, and we have an email showing an easy summarization of the different comparisons between the different carriers, prices, coverages, what's not included in this one, what is in this one. I've got all the information at my fingertips right away. The only added aspect for her was just, hey, take 2 seconds to upload it to the custom GPT that was shared with her, hit send, hit the button and select who it's going to, and done. So those things, like, people just need to start playing with those and figuring out what it can do before they can even figure out what they need it to do within their agency.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Ask Fetch?
I feel like I have.
So it's a really cool product, and they've actually evolved from being just like Florida carrier risk appetites to they're consuming and working with carriers nationally. What I want to see is
you have actually, I think.
You get your Canopy Connect deck page or loss runs or claim and all this stuff. You consume it. You send it to Ask Fetch and say, find me the top 3 carriers who want this risk, especially on the commercial business. Because that's, I think, one of the things a lot of agents struggle with is, like, you always have your top 1 or 2 in your pocket that you're kind of your go-to, but maybe having additional help look over at it and go, hey, what about this carrier who specifically has this risk in their risk profile? That's the stuff where I think is going to, again, I'm focused more on the force multiplier.
So let me expand upon that with the second part of your question, though.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically an kind of underwriter, saying who's going to be a good market for this, that, and the other part, which is a great tool. But the reality is, okay, let's take a picture here in a year, low code, no code.
Yeah.
Well, you can basically recreate the app by prompting it, just like, so if you get accustomed to prompting in, Gemini or GPT, etc. The reality is, I've said it a bunch, but most people, I don't think, are really dissecting this example. The easy jobs are going to be, for the most part, obsolete. The hard jobs are going to become the new easy jobs, and the impossible jobs will become the new hard jobs.
Yeah.
If you think about that and break that down, where most of our jobs, a lot of times these days, for a lot of us, are probably even more of the hard jobs, more middle class ish type of scenario in some respects. All that's going to be shifting over to easy jobs. Then I need to shift my skill set back. I think there's going to be a bit of a splitting of the middle class in some respects again, as far as just more, am I changing my skill set to adapt with what basically is required of the new skill sets out there? Where I'm going with this is the idea that like Ask Fetch is great, and I'm familiar with it, and it was like that is pretty awesome for Florida, especially with the hard market aspect of what Florida and roof and home coverage is there. But if you want to recreate that site, you can do so just by prompting it in several tools out there like Replit, Base 44, Cursor, and some
Yeah.
of those types of things where you think like, well, I don't know how to code. And my answer to that is I don't know how to code either. I had one class in college for coding, somehow had my final would work once and then it wouldn't work anymore, never going back to coding ever again. And in college, those guys were always like, oh, those are going to be the guys that do real well. Everybody needs the, coding kind of guys. They're going to do real well. And now legitimately 80 to 90% of their work within the next 12 months, most of them are already telling you the AI just does my job for me now. And so now
Yeah.
I'm managing the AI. But to this Ask Fetch thing, like it's a great company. It's awesome. But I'm again already sitting here being like, well, I can just recreate it
I
on
think
my own.
to a point, I think
Yeah.
when
I'm
it,
trying
when
to
it
take a
comes
little
down
bit
to,
more than the average person.
yeah, well, and I think some of these tools are going to have access to data that, from my understanding, Fetch actually gets the underwriting risks and carrier appetites from the carriers. So it's specialization in tools that makes it different than what you can vibe code.
Yeah, and
I've
that's what I
heard of
meant. Like, if I wanted to customize it just for my agency,
yeah,
just do my carriers, sure.
yeah,
In this case, you're like, okay, yeah, this is a lot bigger in scale.
yeah.
So it's more
And
of just what works for you. But
the
yeah,
caveat I give everybody when they're going, oh, well, AI can do this thing, AI can do it most of the way, but you still have to be an expert to go, yeah, you're right or you're full of shit.
yeah.
Same thing with
My
like,
example of the symphony example, like,
yep.
you're a conductor as a business owner, you're a conductor of the
Mhm.
symphony, but you're like, I'm going to need my employees to no longer be, the head of the violin section. I don't need you playing the violin anymore. You don't
Right.
need to know what the violin is capable of, what it's supposed to be getting out of it, where
Mhm.
its parts come into play, how it fits in with the rest of the orchestra, et cetera. There, like you don't necessarily need every skill set anymore, but you still need to know, you
No.
still need to be an expert in what is coming out at the end.
Yep. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people miss about AI is, yeah, it's powerful. It's really powerful, but you also have to have at the just licensed, even like when agents approach me and be like, hey, I want to use AI to write content. I'm like, that's good. Do you know what good content is? Do you know what the requirements of the content is? Do you know how you're going to distribute it? Because just having ChatGPT write a blog post for you isn't enough.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
dude, this was a great conversation. We're just hitting 32 minutes we could have gone for 67 minutes, I think, but I think you have a very busy business to run and I have more marketing and ads to do for the day. So, Landry, I appreciate you jumping on a call. Any last words, and how can people contact you if they want to, I don't want them to pick your brain, but I want
Yeah.
them to learn more from you.
Like I said, I realize there's a big need out there. And so if anybody just finds me on Facebook or LinkedIn, Landry Fields, there's only two of us. I'm the shorter, light skinned one that's not nearly as famous as the other one. Friend me. Like I said, by the end of the summer, I'll have a lot of resources. I think that'll be a big value and asset of helping, a lot of agencies out there that have really not dipped their toe into this to really start being able to kind of dip their toe into this in a way that makes sense, make it easier for them, and hopefully a community scenario where we can kind of build upon this together. And because it's kind of the wild, wild west right now in a lot of ways, I think if we can bring a lot more clarity to a lot of these things, more and more people will start jumping on board with it.
All right. Again, thanks, Landry.
Appreciate it.